Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we have the opportunity to talk to an amazing person, a language coach who specializes in American pronunciation and who helps language learners work on their pronunciation, obviously, but that's not all she does, and we'll find out more from her. Hey Kayla, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for asking me to be here with you, Anna. It's a pleasure.
Yes, sure. So I think that there's no better person to introduce you than you. So let's jump right into it. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so a little bit about me. My name is Kayla. I'm originally from upstate New York, and I've been living in Spain since 2018, roughly. And I guess my language learning journey was something that's very similar to many people that I coach, where I didn't get to learn a language or start using a language until I was older. So the first time I ever took a language class was when I was 16. And it was like all I ever wanted to do my whole life was learn another language. And the first day that I could sit in class, I was like, oh God, this is so exciting. I can finally do this thing that I've wanted to do for forever. And I start to learn grammar and vocabulary. And I was like, ooh, this is like different than what I expected it to be.
Right.
And years later, learning more and more grammar and vocabulary, I still couldn't have a conversation. I still couldn't talk to anyone. And it's a pretty similar experience that I think a lot of us have growing up in different education systems worldwide, not just in America or Europe or wherever. So when I got to college, I realized that there were other experiences that I wanted to have so that I could feel like not only I could manage and control my grammar and my vocabulary, but control the way I felt, the way I spoke, the way I made relationships with people, the level of comfort I felt. That was far more important to me than anything else.
Right.
So through my experiences and other people that have helped me along the way, I was able to redefine the way I viewed myself in my second language, which is what I help people do today.
That's great. So, yeah, the same experience that I had, and a lot of people, of course, language learners. So I know that you have a course, you updated it, and let us know about your course a little bit. Who is it for? Like beginners or maybe people who already understand and can speak English more or less?
So good question. And thank you again, Anna, for being one of the people that helped me with my market research for restructuring this course to make it bigger and better.
I hope I could help.
It did. It was so helpful for me. So I work with female online entrepreneurs who are non-native speakers of English, but that need to use English for their business. So these are people that are already, using it, or they're trying to put themselves out there professionally, but maybe there's something that still holds them back or something that they still don't feel comfortable with. And these may be people that, from an outsider's perspective, we think, oh, they feel and look like they just manage their English skills perfectly. But on the inside, they're people who struggle with maybe confidence, feeling authentic and showing off their true personality when speaking in English, or just feeling natural in general. So I help these entrepreneurs enhance their English speaking skills so that they can communicate effortlessly and authentically in only 15 minutes a day. Because entrepreneurs or professionals, they don't have much time. So they often think, okay, I don't have time to sit down for 5 hours a day and practice. Well, that's not necessary with the way I do it. So I do focus on sounds and things that have to do with pronunciation, individual sounds that may be more important for clarity of speech or for empowering our message, depending on the linguistic background of each person. So it's sort of tailored based on the needs of each business owner. But it's much more holistic than just pronunciation. So my coaching process takes people through understanding better their fluency and their relationship with the language, understanding themselves as a communicator, and taking control of their voice so that you can choose how you want people to perceive you on a whim. So it's sort of a mix of fluency, pronunciation, confidence, and even public speaking coaching, sort of fused together all in one.
Wow, that sounds so awesome. I love it. I love it. Okay. So, we've talked about pronunciation, of course. Okay, based on your experience of working with language learners, what role do you think mindset plays in the process of learning a language and acquiring an accent?
Mm-hmm. I think it's one of the foundations for learning a language and acquiring an accent for both of them. It was that way for me personally, and also for the majority of my clients that have worked with me. They say the same thing. They sort of expect to work on things that are more technical with like public speaking or pronunciation or accent. But then when we go into the mindset stuff, they're always so taken back, like, oh, this is a thing, or this is important, or I view myself differently in English than I do in my native language. It's something that we're often not aware of until someone starts asking questions, and until someone encourages us to start analyzing our relationship with language in general. So by being open to thinking about your mindset in language learning and how you think about it, we're able to rewire the way that you view yourself and perceive yourself as a person and as a professional, so that that can be a key factor in feeling that tangible improvement moving forward, especially when we're talking about transforming our communication style or working on pronunciation or accent, because it can feel sort of frustrating. We can get a little bit caught up in all of the technicalities. And the more you learn, the more you realize there's more to learn, which is something Absolutely. That I think both of us have experienced in our non-native languages. So it's a really important aspect to maintain that confidence moving forward, I would say, while being able to work on the technical aspects of language at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Well, have you come across people who resisted change?
100%.
Right. And what do you do in those like cases?
Yeah, and it depends on the client, but this happens all the time, especially like even when people want to work on their fluency or their mindset or their pronunciation. These are all things that are just so close to who we are, like as a person, because it has to do with your style of communication. It has to do with your personality, and accent is very closely linked to identity. And if we think about our native languages, the accent we have in our native languages is like, okay, I identify as being from the North or the South or from this city or for the country. Right. And all of that has to do with who you are. So when we start working on those things, people start to get really close to their identity and have to figure out who they are and who they want to be, which is something we're not like taught to ever think about really when we think about language. But language coaching isn't about like changing people necessarily. So people who resist change, it's sort of helping them see that this isn't about changing you or the way you want to communicate. It's rather about helping you to unlock all of that potential so that you can communicate in your most authentic style that you already had within you, but maybe you struggled accessing that because you didn't have someone to guide you along the way or help you just perceive yourself in a different light, the way that you would like to perceive yourself. So mindset is a huge part of that with the resisting change, because it's not about changing who you are. It's about helping you unlock everything that you already are and just being able to show that to the world.
Yeah, right. Have people told you like that they felt differently when they speak English, and maybe when they have acquired an accent in a way, not perfectly, but they sort of, well, I noticed in myself that whenever I use English, I feel like a little bit like a different person. So for me, it's a good thing because I enjoy it and I love it and I feel good when I'm using English. For some people, and I hear it pretty often, they experience this imposter syndrome that well, they don't feel confident at all, and they avoid communicating in English at all cost, although they can speak English and pretty good English. They just don't feel good. Like what should people do when they don't feel good whenever they speak English?
Yeah. And so this all goes into that mindset part again. That's a really good question. Because we often will find that, and this is something I hear from almost everyone, that the way you feel, the way you act, what you define as your personality or identity in one language might not be the same as another language. And that sort of freaks people out, but that's okay, because you learned that language and you had your experiences and you made relationships in a different way. in that second language. So it's normal that the way that you would behave and respond to situations and communicate would also be different. And that's okay. It's a reflection of a different learning experience linguistically than what you had in your native language. And we can use that to our advantage. For me, identifying very much as both American and taking on that Spanish identity that I feel has become part of me living here as well, and acquiring a certain Spanish accent that I wanted to identify with, I find that I'm able to try and fuse and blend those best parts of myself in Spanish and English together so that as a whole, I can just become a more wholesome person. For example, for me, communicating regarding emotions and being open about emotions is something that's much easier for me to do in Spanish, because the best romantic relationship I've ever had has been in Spanish. So my partner has helped me be able to unlock all of those things. And now I actively apply those conscientiously to my English communication style. And I've seen how it's improved my relationships with my friends and my family because I'm able to communicate in a different way. So you can also choose to fuse those things if you want to, once you're conscientious of the differences.
Wow. Well, this is so interesting because we've talked about this a little bit before. And I thought that what you said was so interesting and eye-opening to me, actually, because I have experienced this with my son. Because basically, I had a baby and I started speaking to him in English when I just sort of started using English. And of course, I talked about my feelings to my baby and I was affectionate to my baby in English. All of that was in English. And then speaking to him in Ukrainian and talking about the same things felt a little bit like weird for me because I was used to doing this in English. So yeah, different experiences in both languages, although like Ukrainian is my native language, but I am not that affectionate in Ukrainian than I am in English. So it might sound weird, but it is what it is.
Exactly. And different languages also have like different feelings behind them, you know, like in Spanish, for example, it's much more straightforward and direct in the communication style and saying what you want and how things need to be or how things should be. It's much more direct than in English. So, you know, when I first started speaking and I was trying to like tiptoe around situations and always be super polite and, you know, over kind, like for everything, I wasn't getting any responses from anyone and no one was actually giving me what I needed or wanted. And it's because they didn't think I was being assertive or that I wanted that thing. To them, it didn't seem like authentic, you know? And so it depends on the language. And we don't use our fluency in one language the same as we use it in another most of the time. Most of the time we use one language for different purposes. Maybe it's professional, maybe it's for certain relationships, maybe it's for travel, and then a native language might be for something else. And that's okay, because we can be equally fluent or feel equally comfortable in two languages, but use them in different ways. And maybe in English, I can talk really well about professional things.
Yeah.
But then for day-to-day conversation, maybe now I feel more comfortable in Spanish because I'm living day-to-day experiences in Spanish. So that's okay to recognize those things. So when we come across like a block in the road or like a bump for us in that journey, it's all right. Like, it's not a big deal. And it's not a reflection of our fluency. It doesn't mean that like, oh my goodness, now I can't speak English because there's one thing that I don't know how to talk about. It's just a reflection of your experience and who you've grown to be until this point in the language.
Yes. And that was like, I knew that thing, but that was so important for me to hear from someone like you that you've experienced the same things. Like, there are things that I can easily talk about in English, and there are things that I can talk about just in Ukrainian, but not in English. And that's okay. It's important to know that that's okay. Like, not to overthink it too much and not to beat yourself up over this. So let's talk about confidence. And I'm asking you because you work with people on their confidence. So what does it mean to be confident in terms of using your second language? Yes.
So this is a really good question because people will often say, or they'll come to me with their goals or the result that they would like to have after our coaching process. And they're like, I just want to be more confident. I just want to feel more confident. But they don't have any tangible definition of what that means to them or kind of experience that they can have that would help them like achieve that feeling that they're looking for. So it's sort of, first of all, turning these words like feeling authentic and confident or showing my personality, turning that all into something tangible for them, depending on each person and their personal experience and what their personal goals are, and then finding out why they're struggling with that aspect of confidence. So helping them find the roots of the barriers that are holding them back, so that they can reshape the way they think about that certain aspect of themselves, so they can feel more authentic and show up as the person they want to be in English. And it's something that we often struggle with much more as adults, because we go through a different learning process. And this is something I had since the beginning in Spanish as well. Because when you learn as an adult, you're super hyper aware of your mistakes in a way that kids don't care. Like kids have no filter. They have no worries in the world. They're just living their lives. Whereas as an adult, we're thinking about like grammar and vocab and pronunciation, all these things at the same time. And we feel like we have to sound perfect for people to understand us, or for us to sound conveying when we're sharing a message. But that's not the case at all. The more we highlight our mistakes, the more other people are going to pay attention to them as well. But if you're confident in what you can do, and you know that you can share your message the way you want to, regardless of making a vocabulary mistake or a grammar mistake or a pronunciation mistake, if you can manage or control the language in a different way with your confidence, people are just going to listen to you and like bow down, because they're going to be like, damn, you speak better than I do. And that's what happens when we feel confident and like we can control the way we sound in another language.
Right. But how to work on those things? How, for example, if I am in a conversation and I forgot a word or I made a mistake and I became super hyper aware of that mistake and I just got stuck, what should I do? What is my next step?
Yeah, good. That's a good question. So people really freak out with this feeling of like getting stuck. They're like, oh my God, what do I do? I drew a blank. I don't know what to say.
Right.
And they're terrified of taking pauses in those moments, because the moment that you take that pause feels like an eternity to you.
Right.
But to the person on the other side, it might just feel like a normal like pause in conversation for you to like reorganize your thoughts, which is something that we do in our native languages all the time, but we become hyper aware of it, like you said, when we're doing it in our non-native language. So identifying moments where we do feel stuck or get stuck is actually like it's an opportunity we can take advantage of, because if you're making mental note of it, and this is something that I do with people when I'm working on fluency with them, is I'm taking note of all of the places where they're getting stuck or where we're feeling those barriers, where they take longer to say things or longer to retrieve words or longer to express an idea. And there's almost always a pattern. It's almost always a certain type of grammar that holds them back, or a certain type of vocabulary, or a certain type of experience. Some people are very good and very like fluent talking about their professional life. And then when I ask them about their day to day or what's going on like with them as a person, that casual talk, it takes them a really long time to retrieve what they want to say. And that's because they haven't practiced in it, or they don't feel comfortable in it yet. Right. So taking advantage of those moments when we feel stuck, if you feel like it's happening to you a lot, sort of writing down or identifying what those moments are, so that then you can categorize them later and think, okay, this is a key or a clue to show me what my weaknesses are and what I can keep working on, which I think is really powerful for us. Because once you get to like a certain advanced level, or even for me, I know once I got to an intermediate level of Spanish, I didn't know how to keep going. I was like, I know I can just keep like reading and writing and speaking to people to learn, more vocab or improve grammar. But for feeling better, I didn't know how to keep working on that, or like how to identify what I should focus on, because I didn't have a grammar tense to focus on. I didn't have specific vocab to focus on. So being able to focus on those moments when you get stuck, if you see that it's something that keeps happening a lot to you, is a really important tool to show you how you can keep moving forward. But we all get stuck every once in a while, like, or lose a thought or our train of thought. It's not a big deal. So it's never something to freak out about. We can always just breathe. And I do give my clients a lot of tricks on like words and phrases and key things you can say in those moments, right, so that you can still sound like an authority figure, and very kind, and be able to have the time to restructure your thoughts and move forward.
Yeah. Wow. That's good. And that's so powerful. This is something that we need. I mean, I was struggling with this. I'm still struggling sometimes, but I remember that when I just started communicating like more with native speakers in English, I was struggling with this so much because I am that kind of a person that I just go blank or lose my train of thought. It happens all the time with me in my native language. I kind of remember it later, but it happens. But I felt it so like harshly in English. I felt like people think that I'm stupid because I forgot a word or I forgot what I wanted to say or yeah. And I noticed that if I'm just being honest and say it as is, like I lost my train of thought. I forgot. I forgot what I wanted to say or what's the
Yeah.
word I'm looking for. I don't remember the name of something and I'm just laugh it out. So laugh it off. I'm just laughing off. So it's kind of people. I can see in people's eyes that they don't think that I'm being stupid or something. I just forgot a word and that's it, and that's not a big deal. And I've never thought about this as a big deal in my native language, but in English it sort of became a big deal. And I know that this is just in my head, that this is just my problem, and it gets in the way sometimes of communication because when I start overthinking something like, okay, I'm gonna have this big important conversation, but what if I forget a word or what if I make a mistake? What's gonna happen? And then I start overthinking it and it gets in the way. I don't wanna have that conversation anymore and I don't feel confident anymore. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I love that you mentioned that part about that's something that happens to you in Ukrainian as well. Because sometimes people think like, oh, this is an issue for me in English. Like I'm just really bad at this in English, or I don't know how to do this in English. But by being able to sort of identify, and this is something I help my clients do as well, is identify how they feel about certain aspects in their English, and then identify with how they feel about those certain aspects in their native language. And when we see numbers that are like drastically different, that's when we know, okay, this is a thing that's about English. This is in this area we need to work on. But oftentimes there will be one or two categories where the numbers will be equally low in both languages. And it's like, okay, so you know now moving forward that you don't have to feel hypersensitive to making videos in English, for example, because you don't feel comfortable making videos yet either in Ukrainian or Dutch or Spanish. Like
Right.
it's not a reflection of who you are, you know, and getting stuck or not feeling 100% fluent in one moment, it's not a reflection of who you are in a language. So it's yeah, important to identify if it's something that happens in your native language as well, for sure.
Yeah, super helpful. So, why do you think it's important to work on our pronunciation? And how did working on your pronunciation in Spanish help you, or what did it give you?
Mhm. I love this question because it's just so close to home with my own experience, which is why I feel so passionate about helping other people in this. Um, so this has a lot to do with confidence as well, in my personal opinion and experience. So once I realized that I could be in control of the way that I wanted to sound and the way I wanted people to perceive me and the identity I wanted to have in my second language, everything changed. Because for so many years, I thought it was all just like left to chance. And I was like, okay, one day I'll sound as good as I want to, or one day I'll sound like a native speaker, or one day, but I had no plan or action like how to get there. I just thought it was something you just had to practice, practice, practice. And of course, that's part of it. But I'm also a person that needs like, I just need someone to tell me how. Like I oftentimes, those certain things that I just won't pick up on my own, I just need someone to tell me how. And it wasn't a need for me to work on pronunciation. Like people could understand me fine. I had, you know, relationships I was building with people in Spanish. I could travel, I could do whatever, and people would understand. But I wanted to identify with a certain personality and a certain kind of feeling of who I wanted to be. And for me, it was really important to feel like I could control the way I sounded. That was a key factor there. So I remember the first sound when I took Spanish phonetics and phonology in college. The first sound that they taught me was the difference between the English D sound and the Spanish D sound. And by I remember my professor telling me just how to move my tongue in a different way. And I said a word and it sounded just like I had always wanted it to sound my entire life. And it was like the most it was like the biggest breakthrough ever for me. And that's when since that moment, I just got hooked on like understanding pronunciation differences, because I was like, I can change it if I want to. And then since that very moment, it became a goal of mine to be like, I am going to control how I want to sound in each moment, because it is up to me. It's not just up to chance.
Right. Yep. This is so good. Such a great explanation. You can be in control of how you sound. So this is up to you. Yep. I love it. Okay. The next one is, what do you think is best to focus on first? Pronunciation or vocabulary? Because a lot of language learners are obsessed with vocabulary. The more, the better.
Yeah.
But pronunciation is overlooked.
Yeah, exactly. I think like when we're beginners in a language, I really think they should go hand in hand. We learn a lot more vocabulary at the beginning just to be able to express those basic ideas, which is really important. But if we don't feel comfortable in the way we say the word, that's also an issue. So for a language that's very, very different and even has a different alphabet than how, or especially if it has a different alphabet from what our native language is, I think it's really important to always have pronunciation integrated into whatever learning experience you're having. But once you're already at like an intermediate level, you have that basic vocabulary, you have that basic grammar. In my personal opinion, pronunciation and prosody more than anything, even more than pronunciation, prosody. So for anyone who's not familiar with that, that's like the intonation, the rhythm, the up and down, the flow, the feel, the musicality of English. And that is much more important for emphasizing your message and conveying your message with conviction than any vocabulary is. Because you can have the best vocabulary in the world, but if you're using really complex or long, especially like multi-syllabic words, and you don't know where to stress them or how to emphasize them, then all you're going to have is a ton of really powerful, impactful words, but all being stressed in different ways, or you don't know how to convey your message in the way you want to. And people aren't going to feel like it was a coherent thing that you said because you weren't focused enough on your pronunciation prosody patterns so that people could hear what they were expecting to hear. Right. Because oftentimes when you say something, if you say an individual word, people know what it is, it's fine. But if we change things a lot within a sentence or a paragraph or a speech that we're giving, people subconsciously, they're not listening word by word, they're listening to the overall message you're saying. So if they're getting confused about the idea or they're not sure what the stress or the focus of your sentences and thoughts are, that's probably going to have a lot to do with the way you're organizing things and the way you're stressing within your prosody and intonation patterns in English. Right. So pronunciation for me has always been way more important than vocabulary.
Right. Yes. I'm on the same page here with you. Yeah. Because it really impacts the way people perceive us, I guess, in a way, and the way you deliver your message. Yeah. Okay. What is the best way for you to learn new vocabulary?
For me, It's always been, and as an adult, because when I was a kid learning vocabulary, like in English, for example, I was always with my flashcards and like memorizing things all the time. And that's something that for learning styles based on like cognitively as children, it's much easier for us to do that and still retain the information. But as adults, literally the worst thing we could do is like have just a list of 20 words and just try to memorize them every day. And so many people come to me and they're like, I want to improve my vocabulary and I'm learning my list of 10 words a day, but like, no, that's just not like realistic either. Like you don't need to know all of the words that you're learning in those moments. So It's always through experiences. That's the best way to learn new vocabulary. For me as an adult, I remember very specific moments of when I learned certain words, phrases, or verbs through the specific experiences I was having. For example, when I was, I was still learning pretty basic vocabulary and I was au pairing in Spain for the first time. I was given a keychain with my set of the keys for the house that had a little keychain on it with a whale. And that was the first time I learned how to say whale in Spanish. Or I remember there was a moment when I was talking with the kids I was taking care of, and all of a sudden everything clicked. He said some really simple example using a different grammatical structure. And that was the first time I understood how to use the subjunctive in Spanish. And it was all through like really simple experiences. And even now, now it's on a much more complex level for me linguistically, but if I learn a new phrase or a new like idiom or way of expressing, it's through an experience of how I saw someone use that phrase in a joke or in a story or something I wanted to express, and someone helped me out with the word that I was trying to find. So those experiences, because they're emotionally connected and tied to us, there's something that your brain is storing because it's useful. But if you just have like a list of words to memorize rather than associating it with some experience, there's no reason for you to remember it. Like it's not useful for your brain, and our brain is always filtering out information we don't need, unfortunately. Right. So if we don't need it, if it's not useful for us, we just throw it away. So it's got to be useful.
Yeah. When I started speaking with my son and he started answering me, I noticed that I'm learning so much new, like so many new words and so many new grammar structures that I want to use, and I search how to use them, and I'm listening to those examples and then I'm using them. So for me, the key thing was, if I'm using this, then I need it, and then I'm going to remember it without a doubt. So this is super helpful just to use it. Of course, if you don't have a child with whom you're communicating in English, find someone, maybe a friend who's interested in English, at least a little bit. Or for example, my husband, we speak in English with my husband like 50% of the time. So it's not always and it's not consistent, but still. And he's not sitting and he's not learning English intentionally ever, but he grasps some things that he needs for his work, for example, or whenever he wants to ask me something, or Alex, our son, he already knows how to say those things because he was just listening and maybe using from time to time and maybe asked me. So yeah, through experiences, this is the best way for sure, because I tried to have my list of words and expressions and grammar rules and all this. I had, if I'm not mistaken, 4 or 5 notebooks. Every notebook was filled with list of words and everything I wanted to remember, and that it didn't work. So I kept going back to those notes and just reading them, but it didn't work because I didn't use all that. I didn't need that at the moment. And as much as I tried to remember some grammar structure, something complex, I couldn't because I wasn't using it once again. And when I tried like for a couple of times to come up with some idea, sentence or whatever using that structure, but just in a conversation because I felt like it. That was the moment when I felt like, okay, now I get this. This is how it's done. So that was,
And there's always that moment, I feel, when it's like the first time we're using, especially if it's with other like native speakers that already know, or they're expecting us to use a word in a certain way. And this has happened to me in Spanish where you hear a word, you hear people use it a lot and you're like, oh, that's really practical. Like I've always wanted to be able to say that. And you think you remember it okay, and you try and put it out there for the first time, and you're just like waiting for everyone's response. You're like, are they just going to be like, okay, that's normal, and just like keep moving on? Are they going to correct me? Are they going to laugh? And I've had lots of moments where, okay, everything was fine. Things kept going. I'm like, okay, yes, I did it. And then I've had moments where I've totally butchered like what I was saying, and people just break out into pure laughter because it's just funny, you know? Yeah. And like you said before, sometimes we just have to laugh it off, because if I made a mistake like that, the same mistake in English, it would sound hilarious. So it's normal. Like, and when we make those mistakes with vocab, it's not that people are laughing at us. They're laughing with us. Like if we allow ourselves to laugh, and then after that mistake, you'll never make the mistake again because it will stay so ingrained in your brain.
Yeah. Totally true. I had those moments too.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just have to, it depends on the way you kind of perceive yourself at that moment. And if you're, I don't know, I'm not a very serious person, so I love to laugh. Well, not always, of course, but I love to laugh at myself, and it helps me so much. Like I notice, okay, even if that person is not laughing with me, I'm still gonna laugh if I think that was funny.
And then they'll laugh with you because they see you laughing. So it's all good.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question I ask every single native speaker, because this is what I get asked usually, but I'm not a native speaker. So, what do you think when people make pronunciation or grammar mistakes, even when native speakers make them? This is something that a lot of non-native speakers are curious to know about, because oftentimes, as I said, and I experienced that, sometimes people feel stupid when they make mistakes. Or it is what it is.
Yeah, and that's a feeling that we tend to have more so when we learn a language as an adult as well, because we're already like have this standard of how we know we communicate in our native language, and we want it to just happen flawlessly the first time in our non-native language, but that's not a realistic goal. So pronunciation and grammar mistakes are going to happen. Like no matter how advanced you get, there will always be like a moment where you just say a word differently and you're like, oh, why did it come out like that? Or you say a grammar or something and you're like, oh, why did that happen? Or we might not even realize the mistake, and that's okay. So the first thing I sort of, when people ask me this question, I rebound the question to them first. And I think, okay, if we're speaking in your native language, what are you going to think about me if we're having this conversation in your language and I make a pronunciation or grammar mistake? What would you tell me? And they're like, I wouldn't care.
Right.
Like, it's like, if I know what you're saying, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, exactly. So it's a mistake just like any other. If your response to that question is you would think someone is stupid or unintelligent or whatever, then you should probably reanalyze how you perceive people in language. Right. That would be my first, your first blockage in perceiving yourself better in your non-native language. But people make typos when they're writing all the time, or people misspeak. I make grammar mistakes when I speak all the time, because you change an idea or how you want to say something, and instead of putting an adjective, you put a noun, or you say a verb a different way, and no one cares, and you just keep going.
Right.
So when you do that in your non-native language, it's fine too. And if we fear making mistakes and we allow that sense of perfectionism, because we can get really trapped in that sense of perfectionism as non-native speakers, we won't ever move forward. You're never going to find areas or ways of improving or experiences where you can learn and grow. Because when pronunciation and grammar mistakes are major and they actually impede us from understanding the message that you're trying to share, that can cause confusion. But in that, the worst case scenario is someone would say they're confused about what you're saying, or they would ask you to clarify. So you'd realize your error, you would clarify, and you'd move on. And it wouldn't be like a big deal. Like that's the worst case scenario.
Right.
Which when you think about it, you're like, okay, that's not really that bad. They just ask and I respond and we move on with the conversation. So as long as we choose to learn from our mistakes and, remember them and have them mean something. Like if you keep making the same mistake over and over, it's because you're not learning from it. You're not really analyzing those situations. But if you're learning from them, there's no need to fear those experiences, because they're actually opportunities to find where you can improve and focus on for moving forward. So they're like little blessings in disguise, in my opinion, making mistakes, because they show us where we can keep improving our own communication style.
Right. Well, it took me a long time to realize that, because I had this problem. I wanted everything to be perfect, but it's not realistic, of course. Mm-hmm. So now what I do, I notice every single mistake that I make, and especially because I'm recording videos, I can analyze myself. So I always make some mistakes, and I just make some mental notes about those mistakes and try not to make them, or if I make them, I correct myself and just move on, because I'm still making those mistakes. So what is my choice? Not to speak whatsoever, or just learn from my mistakes. So I choose to learn, and I choose to make mistakes now. Of course, I had to work on this. I had to work on my mindset, because I was kind of a perfectionist in this area. With my pronunciation, with my grammar, I wanted everything to be perfect, and I wanted to speak perfectly like now, because I know I can, but it needs some work and time. So yeah, I just had to let all that go and just let myself speak.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. I have one more question.
Awesome.
to you. And this is something that we've talked about, and this is something that happened recently. And I was just wondering because I had a lot of questions about this. So, a lot of language learners wonder, and I'm sure that you have been asked this question: do native speakers understand every single person that is speaking English and every single accent and dialect?
Yes, that's a good question. And the simple answer is no. That is not true, that everyone will just as a given understand someone else that has the same native language. It's a common misconception. But if you think about even in your native language, especially languages that are spoken around so many different areas of the world, like Spanish or different dialects of Chinese or Arabic, they change so much, not just from region to region, but country to country. And this can be with the way you use grammar, with the way you use vocabulary, and the way you pronounce different things, or the way you stress certain words. There are words that I stress in American English in a different way than they are stressed in British English.
Right.
And there are still words that I find every once in a while, like spelled a different way or said a different way. And I'm like, oh, that's a thing. And I'll like text my friends that are from like Ireland or whatever. And I'm like, is that how you say that word? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, I had no idea. Like, I didn't know what that meant. So I had two experiences where this happened to me. I've had more than two experiences, but two really main experiences where I just had no idea what was going on. And I was supposedly speaking the same language as these other people. So my first one is when I was au pairing for my first summer in Spain. There were a lot of other international people au pairing in the same town. And there was a guy that came to au pair that was from Newcastle, England. And I had never heard a Newcastle accent in my life. And I think many Americans were also like so used to just hearing American television and American TV and American everything that we're also not as used to other accents. If you live in England and you're used to speaking to people from other accents, then it's more pertinent, it's more relevant to your life. But it wasn't relevant for me until that moment. So he started talking to me and I'm like, okay, he's speaking English. There's a couple things I just picked up that like, I know he's speaking English. I know it's English, but I didn't understand anything he just said. And I literally spent 2 full days with this guy. He was very, very kind, very talkative, which was good for me because he spoke for 2 days and I just said yes or no to like his questions, sort of like guessing, like, oh yeah, me too. Or, oh yeah, I totally get it. Or, oh wow, that's a crazy situation. And I had no idea what he was saying. After 2 days, my brain was able to like just pick up on his linguistic patterns better because it is my native language. So then after a while, I was like, okay, I got it. But those first couple of days, I had no idea what was going on. And that's something that happens to a lot of people. My second situation is when I went to visit some friends in Ireland. I also met them from au pairing. And this was after I had already met a bunch of people with different accents. And I felt already like, oh yeah, like I understand accents really well now in English. Like I got it, I'm all good. And I was in like the city center of Dublin waiting for my friends to get there. And I was just sitting there like next to some statue, like with my backpack, just like looking around. I was like, oh, I'm in Ireland for the first time. I was all excited. And this elderly man comes up to me and he was like, okay, I was obviously like a tourist because I was sitting there like a tourist. And he just started talking to me and I had no idea what he was saying. His Dublin accent was so different than my friends that I had talked to. And he started speaking with a bunch of slang and like using phrases and terms I'd never heard. And he thought it was funny. I knew he was doing it on purpose to like joke around with me, to like play with a tourist, And I was super confused. I was like, what? Excuse me? Sorry. And he kept saying the same things over and over. And eventually I just got to the point where I was like, I'm really sorry, sir. Like, I can't understand you. Like, I feel really stupid, but I really can't understand you. So I'm just going to go meet up with my friends. And it was lovely talking to you. And he was just laughing his ass off. He thought it was so funny. But even after having met other people that spoke other accents, I still had trouble hearing another one, and that depends on your linguistic background. Some people grow up hearing accents all the time. I grew up with a very monolinguistic, all of the accents the same, and a lot of people have that experience. So it depends on your personal experience as well, but it's never a given that you're going to understand everyone in your native language.
That's so true. Like here in Ukraine, we have a lot of different dialects, and some of them I just can't understand what people are saying. I just can't. I don't know
Mhm.
those words. I don't know those terms, and I can't understand the way they're speaking. So to
Yeah.
me, it's not exactly Ukrainian. So it is a struggle to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those situations are hilarious.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Exactly. They're fun stories.
yeah. Okay, well, do you struggle to express yourself in English sometimes? Because I know I do in Ukrainian. Just sometimes
Mhm.
words just don't come out easily. I just can't express myself.
Mm. I actually think this is something I was talking about this yesterday with someone, that going through the experience of learning how to express myself better in Spanish has helped me become much more confident in expressing myself in English, because I feel like I became so aware of the little things that can make us much more expressive that I wasn't in tune with at all years ago.
Right.
So I really use that to my advantage as much as I can. As soon as I learn a new way of self-expression in Spanish, I start analyzing how I do that in English, and I'm able to sort of
Mm-hmm.
analyze both of them on like a level playing field, and
I
see where I
love
want to
that.
improve. But of course, there are always moments where I find it difficult to express myself. In English, I would say when it's like a tough conversation, when I have to have like an emotional conversation or open up to someone about something that like I've been holding in or holding back, it's very hard for me to let go of those emotions and like be blunt and straightforward. Much harder for me to be straightforward in English. Whereas in Spanish, it's much easier for me to be straightforward. Um, but then in Spanish, when I get angry, it's very hard for me to express myself, because my experiences of being angry in the past have always been in English. So when I do have an experience where I get very frustrated in Spanish, all of the words just like mix together. I have English and Spanish going at the same time. I start to speak like Spanglish a little bit, and my boyfriend is like used to, like, he knows all the curse words now in English, so so I can start cursing and he just knows that I'm like pissed off, and can just like take it with the flow, and maybe he'll mock me and make me laugh with whatever I'm saying. But it depends. Our self-expression is different in each language, so there are definitely moments where I get
Yeah.
stuck in Spanish and in English.
Yeah, I get this. Okay, and I have just one little silly question because I get asked all the time this question. Do native speakers have problems with understanding songs sometimes?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. That's an awesome question, because that happens to me a lot too. And I was super like hyper aware of the fact that when I listened to Spanish songs on the radio, I wouldn't always understand like when they were like rapping or singing super fast. I wouldn't pick up all the words, and I would
Right.
get like really uncomfortable with it. I'm like, oh, supposedly I speak Spanish and I can't understand these songs. And I would freak out. But then I think about it and I'm like, okay, when a rap song comes on in English that I really like, I literally know like the last word of every line. and and that's what sticks out to me. The reason why that sticks out to me is because of prosody. I understand that now.
Right.
But all the other things inside of it, even if I understand what the words are, I didn't necessarily understand the meaning, because my way of communicating, like I don't speak like a rapper, or I don't speak super informal all the time. And there'll be like words or phrases I'll hear in a song that I'll like ask my friends sometimes, like, what is that thing? Like, and they'll be like, you don't know what that is? And I'm like, no. And they'll tell me about some concept. I'm like, oh my God, why would someone say that? So it's just like it depends on your personal experience and the kind of song you're listening to. If I listen to a country song, I'm always going to understand every word. But if I'm listening to something where people talk in a different way, they're using different vocab or self-expression, and I might be a little lost, and that's okay.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I think that's okay too because it's the same with me in Ukrainian or Russian songs. So,
It's just like no one is ever going to understand 100% of what they hear always.
No, no, no. I
And
understand.
I'm someone now that I'm obsessed with language, and I'm obsessed with how people speak differently and have different accents and pronunciation in both English and in Spanish. And I'm literally always learning something new. So like there's never a point where you're just going to know everything or understand everything. Like there's always going to be someone else that has a different tendency or a different dialect or different accent, because they come from somewhere else. They have a different
right.
background. They're a different person. Like So anyone who says they're a know-it-all with everything it's just not true. It's just not true.
I
So there's
think
no pressure to know it all.
Right. I think that this is just their personal insecurity and maybe a problem they have because it's impossible. I came to realize this as well, and actually I'm enjoying this, that I have this opportunity to learn something new every single day because I'm
Exactly.
growing, I'm improving, and that's a cool feeling for me.
Exactly. Like there's never any, like we never reach any ceiling that we can't like keep like growing with, even in our native language. Like in your native language you can always learn more words and always learn better how to do public speaking or self-expression or your
Right.
own confidence. So it's a never ending journey, and that's what I love most about it, is that you can always improve.
Yeah.
So it's good to set little end goals for ourselves, like mini goals of what we'd like to do or what we'd like to accomplish so that we can keep growing. But apart from that, there's never any like perfect, pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's like you have so much power to control what you want to improve on and also what you want to just keep the same. Like I work with a lot of people that tell me there's certain aspects of their pronunciation or accent they want to change, and we work on those. And there's other parts where they're like, okay, do I sound clear? Is it obvious what I'm saying? Yes. Okay. I want to keep that because that's a really cool part of my Spanish identity. And I want to speak with that accent, or that makes me feel connected to my Russian identity. And I want to maintain that because it doesn't impede my clarity. And I'm like, all right, let's make an action plan for that. So it's super cool that we can mix and match those things.
Yeah, yeah. And this is just shows me how confident those people are because
Mm-hmm.
they can identify those things and they know that I want to keep this. It doesn't matter what someone else is saying
Which
about
is
my
so
accent. I
cool.
just want to keep this. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
this is super,
Exactly.
super cool. Um, there was something in my mind that I wanted to mention. Huh, just as usual, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, poof. Yeah, but oh yeah, I remembered that I just keep reminding myself all the time. Just look at yourself like a year, 2 years ago, and look at yourself now. So you can actually like you watch everything in English. You communicate with people. You communicate with native speakers. You don't have like much trouble or problems with this. And remember where you were, where you started. Like you couldn't make a sentence, and you were so self-conscious, and I just feel instantly so much better. Like, yes, I am improving, I am growing, I am working on myself. Yeah, maybe today wasn't my best English day, but
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow is going to be a better day. I'm going to be able to express myself better. It's also so much depends on the way I'm feeling.
100%.
Yeah, right. Sometimes I'm just not feeling so good. So, of course, I don't feel like speaking. I don't feel like thinking at all.
For anyone, like even in English, my English is far worse if I'm tired or if I don't feel well or if I'm like cranky and grumpy for whatever reason. I don't express myself as flawlessly
As
as I would like to.
eloquently as I would love.
It just like all goes downhill. So when I'm communicating in Spanish and I'm like really tired, or it's like I'm about to go to bed, or I'm half asleep, my American accent comes out way more than in any other situation. Like with muscle memory, it's already like a habit to pronounce things a different way now. But there are moments where that's not going to happen. And when I get tired is one of them. So I'll be like, "Rah," and I'll mumble words. And my boyfriend just sort of like figures it out now because he's used to it. But before I used to get really mad and angry about those situations and thought I had to be like 100% turned on and focused all the time on how I was using language, even when I was tired or exhausted or angry or mad. But now it's like, if something comes out and it's like, you can really hear my American side, that's okay because like I'm American. I'm American. Like it's okay.
Totally.
And there, I've got nothing to be ashamed of there. And if it comes out, now I view it, and it took me a really long time to get to this. I'd say even within this past 6 months is when I really started to feel confident in this aspect, is that when those things come out, accepting that as like a part of who I am and my other parts of my identity, as a person and not reject them as like a moment of failure, because that's not what it is. That's the other part of you coming out and just saying hello, which
Yeah.
is
You
fine
just
and
took
good.
my thoughts and put them into words, like literally, because I thought the same thing, and I was like, at one point I was like, I am bilingual. I speak two languages. I speak English and I speak Ukrainian, and of course I have moments even in Ukrainian when I use English words now. So
Uh-huh.
it's okay, but somehow I am proud when I'm using English words in Ukrainian, and I am ashamed when I'm using something Ukrainian in English. But that
Mhm.
doesn't have to be the case. Like,
Exactly.
we're
And
bilingual.
sometimes there's not like a specific or a very good way to translate something that we want to say. And because we,
Right.
as bilingual or multilingual people, because we have so many options to pull from of how we want to communicate ourselves, which is so cool, we like sometimes a different word will come to you because you just know how like great that is to express an idea, but maybe that idea or that sense of expression, it doesn't exist in the other language. So it's normal for us to want to take that and apply it to something else. That happens to me a lot in, in both languages. Every day, almost every day, there's some sort of situation where because we can always learn and grow, and there'll be situations where there'll be like an expression or certain word I want to use, and I'm just not aware of the existence of that like phrase or expression in Spanish, for example, because I've never had to use it, so it was not important for me. For example, yesterday I was translating something for my boyfriend, and I was like, and there's this expression we use, and like literally this is what it would be, and this is what it means. And he was able to be like, that's just like this expression that we have. And he pulled out the expression that he had that was similar, but not a direct translation. So I'm like, okay, like there is a way to express that. It's a little bit different, but by stopping and saying like, okay, in English, we have this expression that's this, or we have this word that means this, and you can explain the meaning, and that other speaker, if they have a word that can express that, they'll give that to you and they'll lend you that knowledge, and you can be like, okay, I'll use that for the future. And if not, you're still able to take that part of your other identity and put it forward and be like, look, this is the idea I want to express because this is how I'm used to expressing it. And then you can still explain what it means and still use that
Right.
word in context, have people understand you, and not lose the essence of communication that you want to have in that moment.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for this conversation. That was so awesome.
Uh,
In this day and age that we have the internet and all these opportunities and people like you that offer these courses and lessons, we can learn being in our home countries and just master whatever we want. And this is what a lot of people are looking for. And I'm so happy that I found you and that I can just offer my audience something like this.
Oh, I'm so glad that we got in touch. Like our conversations so far have just been so incredible. Like
Yeah.
just such a lovely person to connect with, and you're so knowledgeable about what you do. And based on your experience and your story, like there are so many people that you are inspiring in your audience of like, okay, where could I get to, or how much could I do without ever even living in another country, or just from like pure want or desire or interest, like how
Yeah.
far could I go? And I think it's really important to have more people that are non-native speakers of any language promoting learning of that language, because it's very easy for a native speaker who's never learned another language to say, oh, just do it, or oh, just be confident, or oh, just say it like this. But like, you are the social proof that it works because you've done it and you're doing it on yourself and you do it every day. Like, and that gives people so much confidence moving forward that in a way, in different ways than a native speaker can do it. And I think it's so important for other people to see. So like,
Yeah.
thank you for
Oh, thank you so
having
much
like such a big impact on such a huge audience.
for these kind words. I want to cry right now because because I'm thinking about all those people that leaving me comments, and I can't answer to every one of them, but they are saying that you're inspiring me so much, and this means so much to me, the world, because when I started, like you said, I just wanted.
Yeah.
I didn't have a specific goal. I didn't have a career that needed me to speak English. I just felt like it. And when I got this feedback from people saying that, wow, you're doing this and you're inspiring me and you're helping me, or just like the other day, I got this comment like, I've been watching you for a year or maybe more, and my English have improved so much and I feel so much more confident. I'm like, my gosh, like I have never imagined that I can have such an impact, and sometimes it's scary for me.
Isn't
Yeah.
that incredible though? Like how much, because I think it's very easy for us like to get caught up in like, okay, we're working so hard every day or doing these things, and like, are we actually doing anything? Are we actually helping anyone? And then
Right.
it's like you hear those things and and you're like, this is why I do it. And it's your motivation to keep going because you
Yeah.
realize that like I want to be the person that I wish I had had 5 years ago to help me get to where I am now, you know, because it would have taken away so many moments of frustration and of anger and of self-doubt and of lack of confidence. Like I would have been able to throw away so many of those moments and replace those with just genuine great experiences that were like pushing me forward in life, or having good relationships instead of tearing myself down and
Yeah.
shutting myself up because I thought I didn't have the right to speak, you know? So it's like it's incredible to see all of the impact that you're making, and yeah,
Yeah.
hold on to those moments because it's it's what's going to keep pushing you forward, you know, and you're going to have so much more of an impact as the months and years go on.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this conversation till the end. And I'll leave the links to Kayla's Instagram and her website in the description box down below. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.